Roger Williams and the Puritans, the fight for religious freedom in early America. Welcome to an in-depth exploration of a pivotal chapter in early American history, the life and influence of Roger Williams, a seminal figure in the fight for religious freedom. In 1620, the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, seeking a haven from religious persecution. Over the ensuing decade, their colony grew slowly, numbering merely 300 settlers by 1630. This period marked the onset of significant Puritan migration to the Massachusetts Bay, fundamentally transforming the socio-political fabric of New England. Today, we delve into Roger Williams's critical role in advocating for the separation of church and state, his challenges to Puritan orthodoxy, and his profound impact on Native American relations. Through meticulous analysis, we retrace the steps of a man whose ideals would sow the seeds for principles enshrined in the very foundation of the United States. The Pilgrims and early Plymouth colony. The Pilgrims, a faction of separatists dissenting from the Church of England, embarked on the Mayflower and landed at Plymouth in December 1620. Their exodus was driven by a fervent desire to practice their faith free from state-imposed constraints. The inaugural years were marked by extreme adversity. The settlers faced brutal winters, rampant disease, and insufficient supplies. By the spring of 1621, nearly half of the original 102 passengers had succumbed to the harsh conditions. Throughout the 1620s, the colony's growth remained stunted. Isolated from other European settlements and grappling with the formidable New England environment, the population incrementally reached approximately 300 by 1630. This stagnation underscored the challenges inherent in establishing a foothold in the New World without substantial support or reinforcements. The Puritans' migration to New England. In contrast to the Pilgrims, the Puritans sought to reform the Church of England from within, advocating for the elimination of perceived Roman Catholic practices. However, under King James I and his successor, King Charles I, Puritans faced escalating persecution. The enforcement of uniformity by Archbishop William Laud intensified pressures, culminating in what became known as the Great Migration between 1629 and 1640. In 1628, prominent Puritan leaders established the Massachusetts Bay Company, a royal charter that granted unprecedented autonomy. Notably, the charter omitted any requirement for the company's headquarters to remain in England, enabling the entire governance structure to relocate to New England. In 1630, led by Governor John Winthrop, approximately 1,000 Puritans sailed aboard 11 ships, bringing with them livestock, provisions, and a vision for a new society grounded in their religious convictions. They founded settlements at Salem, Boston, Dorchester, and Charlestown, laying the groundwork for a theocratic community. Structure of Puritan society. Puritan society was meticulously organized around townships, covering areas between 40 to 60 square miles. Each township featured a centrally located village, with the meeting house serving as the nucleus for both spiritual and civic activities. This edifice functioned as the church, town hall, and communal gathering place. Adjacent was the blockhouse, a fortified structure designed to provide sanctuary during potential indigenous incursions, a testament to the prevailing tensions of the period. Residential areas were arranged along a primary thoroughfare, with homesteads constructed from readily available timber. Initial dwellings were simplistic log structures, which evolved into framed houses featuring steeply pitched roofs conducive to shedding snow. Behind each residence extended narrow strips of farmland, reflecting an agrarian lifestyle predicated on communal interdependence and self-sufficiency. Education and literacy in Puritan New England. Education was a cornerstone of Puritan society, driven by the doctrinal imperative that all individuals should be literate to engage directly with the scriptures. In 1642, the Massachusetts Bay Colony enacted legislation mandating parental responsibility for their children's education, reinforcing community expectations of universal literacy. The subsequent Old Deluder Satan Act of 1647 required towns with 50 or more households to appoint educators to teach reading and writing, while those with 100 or more had to establish grammar schools to prepare students for higher education. This educational framework yielded literacy rates estimated to surpass 90% among males by the late 17th century, a remarkable achievement compared to contemporary European societies. The establishment of Harvard College in 1636 further exemplified the Puritans' commitment to intellectual development, primarily intended to train clergy and ensure doctrinal purity within the colony. The Puritan Sabbath and religious practices. The sanctity of the Sabbath was profoundly entrenched in Puritan life. Commencing at sunset on Saturday and concluding at sunset on Sunday, the Sabbath was devoted exclusively to religious observance and abstention from secular activities. The General Court codified regulations prohibiting work, travel, and leisure pursuits deemed inconsistent with the day's solemnity. Enforcement of these regulations was rigorous. An illustrative case involved a couple reprimanded for sitting together under an apple tree on the Sabbath, an act perceived as frivolous. In another instance, a sea captain was placed in the public stocks for 2 hours for kissing his wife upon returning from a prolonged voyage, as the affectionate gesture occurred on the Sabbath. Such stringent enforcement highlights the extent to which religious doctrine permeated legal and social norms. Arrival of Roger Williams. Into this milieu arrived Roger Williams in February 1631. Born in London in 1603, Williams was a protégé of Sir Edward Coke, a leading jurist who recognized his intellectual prowess and facilitated his education at the Charterhouse School and subsequently at Pembroke College, Cambridge. Initially aligning with Puritan reformist ideals, Williams grew increasingly critical of the Church of England's lack of separation from Catholicism. Williams's theological journey led him to espouse separatist views more radical than those of his Puritan contemporaries. His arrival in the Massachusetts Bay Colony introduced a formidable intellect whose convictions would soon challenge the very fabric of Puritan society. Conflict with Puritan authorities. Williams was initially welcomed and served briefly as a teacher in the Salem Church before relocating to Plymouth due to disagreements with local authorities. During his time in Plymouth, he cultivated relationships with the Wampanoag tribe and diligently studied their language and customs. His empathy towards indigenous peoples and insistence on equitable treatment began to distinguish him from his peers. Upon returning to Salem, Williams openly criticized the legitimacy of the Massachusetts Bay Charter, contending that the king had no rightful claim to grant lands without purchasing them from the native inhabitants. Furthermore, he asserted that civil authorities should not enforce religious conformity, advocating for an unprecedented separation of church and state. These views directly contravened the theocratic principles underpinning the colony's governance. Banishment from Massachusetts Bay Colony. In October 1635, the General Court summoned Williams to answer for erroneous and dangerous opinions. Despite his eloquent defense, the court declared him guilty of sedition and heresy, ordering his banishment from the colony. He was given 6 weeks to depart on the condition that he cease spreading his beliefs. However, his continued activities prompted the court to order his immediate arrest and deportation to England. Forewarned by friends in January 1636, including Governor John Winthrop, Williams fled into the winter wilderness. His departure marked a critical juncture, both challenging the limits of colonial authority and setting the stage for the establishment of a new settlement predicated on his principles. Journey through the wilderness. Embarking on a perilous journey, Williams endured 14 weeks in harsh winter conditions. Armed only with a staff, a compass, a hatchet, and flint for making fires, he navigated the untamed landscape. Williams later recounted the extremity of his ordeal, surviving sorely tossed in a bitter winter season, not knowing what bread or bed did mean. His knowledge of native languages and prior goodwill facilitated his survival. He found refuge among the Wampanoag and later the Narragansett tribes, who provided shelter and sustenance. This period of exile not only tested his resilience, but also deepened his understanding and respect for indigenous cultures. Founding of Providence and Rhode Island. In the spring of 1636, Williams and a small group of adherents settled at the headwaters of Narragansett Bay. Advised by Narragansett leaders Canonicus and Miantonomo, he acquired land through formal negotiations, ensuring that the transfer was consensual and equitable. He named the settlement Providence, signifying his gratitude for what he perceived as divine intervention in his deliverance. From its inception, Providence was a haven for those seeking religious freedom. Williams instituted a government premised on majority rule in civil matters, but guaranteed absolute freedom of conscience. This radical approach attracted Baptists, Quakers, Jews, and others marginalized elsewhere, fostering a community characterized by religious pluralism. Relations with Native Americans. Williams's rapport with Native Americans was unparalleled among colonial figures. His A Key into the Language of America, published in 1643, was a pioneering work that provided comprehensive insights into the Narragansett language and customs. The text served not only as a linguistic tool, but also as an appeal for mutual respect and understanding. Amid escalating tensions during the Pequot War, Williams leveraged his relationships to prevent the Narragansetts from allying with the Pequots against English settlers. His diplomatic acumen was instrumental in maintaining peace and safeguarding the fledgling colonies from broader conflict. Williams consistently advocated for fair trade practices and the recognition of indigenous sovereignty. Later life and legacy. Throughout the subsequent decades, Williams remained a central figure in Rhode Island's governance. In 1644, he secured a parliamentary charter uniting Providence, Portsmouth, and Newport into a singular colony. The charter enshrined the principles of religious liberty and self-governance, concepts that were revolutionary for the time. Williams continued his theological writings and corresponded extensively with contemporaries, challenging dogma and advocating for tolerance. His death in 1683 marked the end of a life dedicated to the pursuit of liberty of conscience. The precepts he championed resonated profoundly, influencing Enlightenment thinkers and shaping the philosophical foundations of American democracy. The First Amendment's Establishment Clause echoes Williams's insistence on the separation of church and state, cementing his legacy as a progenitor of religious freedom in the United States. Roger Williams's life story is a testament to the enduring struggle for religious liberty and the assertion of individual rights against oppressive systems. His unwavering adherence to his convictions, despite ostracism and exile, exemplifies the courage required to effect meaningful change. The establishment of Rhode Island as a bastion of tolerance provided a prototype for the pluralistic society that America would strive to become. In an era when conformity was enforced and dissent punished, Williams's advocacy for freedom of conscience was both radical and prescient. His legacy endures as a reminder of the fragility of liberty and the necessity of vigilance in its preservation. As we continue to navigate complex issues of religious and personal freedoms, the principles espoused by Roger Williams remain profoundly pertinent. Let us honor his memory by fostering a society that values diversity, promotes understanding, and upholds the fundamental rights that are the bedrock of a just and equitable nation. We extend our appreciation to the numerous historians and archivists whose meticulous scholarship has illuminated the life and impact of Roger Williams. Their dedication ensures that pivotal narratives such as this remain accessible for scholarly discourse and public education. If this exploration has enriched your understanding of early American history, we invite you to like and share this video. Subscribe to our channel for more comprehensive analyses of historical figures and events that have shaped the course of human history.